Cold War era reawakened a sort of human fear that had always existed. The fear of extinction. There was a different dimension in that anxiety though. The novelty was the advent of the hydrogen bomb, several times more devastating than the previous fission bombs. The existence of the device was responsible for establishing a climate of intimidation and reluctance on both sides of the Iron Curtain, something that would later be called nuclear deterrence. The idea that whole cities could be wiped out by the power of sheer heat was enough to restrain people from pressing the red button. Nobody wanted to live the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At least, that was the fear instilled in the general population.
He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you and you. Duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover. This is an official civil defense film produced in cooperation with the Federal Civil Defense Administration and in consultation with the Safety Commission of the National Education Association.
For the authorities, it was simply a matter of diplomacy, the creation of an atmosphere of constant alert. For the public, it was the rise of a new imagination of disaster, as Susan Sontag called it. The Cold War ended, and there was no human extinction. The end of the war coincided with a revival of the video game industry. Games had more interactive systems available that enabled them to incorporate innovative mechanics and tell stories with more depth. New development houses were rising. Interplay Entertainment was one of them, founded by a man named Brian Fargo. Fargo had a team work on an idea for a post-nuclear world, desolate and hostile. That place was called a wasteland, as was called the game. Flash forward 9 years, and it is 1997. A small team at Interplay was working on a brand new RPG title, but they weren't sure about its concept. The original idea was, according to game director Tim Cain, to make a time travel detective game, but artist Jason Anderson wanted an alien-themed game, and designer Scott Campbell, who ended up writing the story for Fallout, wanted time travel with dinosaurs. The final idea turned out to be a retro-futuristic, atom-punk, post-apocalyptic setting, an idea born out of Fargo's desire to make a sequel to Wasteland. The basic premise of the game is life in an underground vault, in this case Vault 13. Borrowing from the fears and paranoia of the Cold War USA, vaults like 13 were built as the government's primary measure against the imminent danger of a nuclear strike. And the player gets to live in one of these shelters almost 100 years after those fears came true. Unlike the now popular image of a vault dweller as a heavily armed, fearless aggressor who faces any challenge, life in a vault was originally portrayed as dull and mechanical. Later in the game, during the player's return to Vault 13, they can notice the routine of the place, how unremarkable and vulnerable those lives seem, and how that reality is contrasted with the incessant threats and instability of the outside world. The failure of a water purification chip is the initial event that breaks such a sense of alienated comfort, as a player character is chosen to venture out of the vault and look for a replacement chip, which brings us back to the theme of extinction. Just like the nuclear scare of the Cold War, the game's main quest consists of the Overseer's fear that his people may die out, except that in the microcosm of the vault, only one person is in charge of avoiding that, not a whole set of institutions. And that's where the player comes in.
This is crucial to our survival. And frankly, I think you're the only hope we have. You need to go find us another controller chip.
The Overseer gives the player instructions in a cinematic sequence that helps build a sense of urgency. The man looks and talks like he really trusts the Vault Dweller, and everything depends on them. This is an adequate way to build up the image of a savior, a messenger of the ignorant and confined people of the Vault, someone who's going to venture out like no one else in that shelter has ever done. Or have they? But the sequence also serves as an immersive mechanism, creating the suspense of exploring the outside world for the first time, especially through the first-person perspective of the dweller leaving the vault and facing the dark cave ahead. It's a terrifying mission, and there is no guarantee of survival in such an unfamiliar world. But the game gives the player choices, ways to create a character who's ready to face the challenge of a lifetime. In a speech at GDC 2012, game director Tim Cain said this.
So Chris said, hey, I have an idea what we could do. We're make a perk mesh of cool things you can add to your character based on prerequisites of what's already in your character. It was really easy to code. It was very successful. QA loved that they could make characters that were different than the guy sitting right next to them in QA, and they could play the game very differently because of it. We just said, we don't care where people can go. They can go anywhere they want. If they go into some area that's too strong for them, they'll get killed, and then they'll learn not to go in there yet, and they'll look forward to the challenge of being able to go back. We wanted a non-linear story, so the player could choose wherever he could go, and the story would still unfold, and so the onus was on us for making sure that the stories could unfold that way.
Okay, so the Vault Dweller is out to save their people, but there is a caveat. Those 150 days. What do they mean in the game world? Tim Cain has mentioned more than once that the timer was a controversial idea until the very release of the game. In an interview with Chris Bratt from Eurogamer, he discusses the issue.
We argued that timer up until the day it shipped. Half the team liked it, thought it added a sense of pressure, a sense of foreboding, and you better get your stuff done and all that. The other team was like, because of that timer, I'm not doing all these wonderful side quests because I feel like I better go.
How the timer alters the narrative depends on the individual experiences of the game, but it's safe to say that exploration can have a completely different structure because of it. Exploring remote areas while constantly checking the calendar can affect the way players receive and interpret information. There's the Glow, the faraway location where the Vault Dweller needs to go if they want to join the Brotherhood of Steel and gain access to some sweet equipment that enables them to survive in a much more efficient way. But how many days to get there? How many days to return? And then after that, how many days to travel to key locations where information about the water chip is available? These are all tiny plans that have to be made if the player is to beat that timer and save their vault from its downfall. The Vault Dweller's journey is that of an inexperienced hero or heroine who is often overwhelmed by problems that Wastelanders need help with.
I am in desperate need of assistance. My daughter Tandy is missing. I do not know what to do.
Well, some caravans have been disappearing on us lately. Damn if anyone can figure out what happened to them. Simple. Find out who's doing it and tell me.
Now, looks like we've got ourselves a situation here. I know Gizmo's behind this, but I need proof. You interested in helping?
Such a post-nuclear world is the perfect scenario for many dangers and even simple issues that a privileged individual can face in order to get acclimated and get a taste of what's to come if they really want to find that water chip. Quests offer a variety of ways to complete objectives, and that's already known about Fallout's design. But navigation itself feels very intuitive and exciting, which is crucial for progress, especially considering the inconvenient existence of that timer. The location of another vault, Vault 15, where a new chip may be found, is given as the first game objective, and on the way lies the small village of Shady Sands. One of the first people the player will find there is Katrina, a former dweller of that vault. When asked about a water chip, she'll mention Vault 15 and how it's been abandoned. Now, not only does the player know the exact name of the place, but also its possible state and the fact that whatever is in there must be up for grabs. The vault becomes a more attractive place and the player will feel more confident to go there and explore it. Or they will be more cautious, since dereliction more often than not means danger in the wasteland. There is a similar sort of informational fluidity when the Vault Dweller reaches the Hub, a larger trading settlement, and manages to buy a holodisk that contains some information about water purification chips from a local librarian. The holodisk mentions all the vaults in a game map. Vault 13 is home, Vault 15 is abandoned, and if the player has already visited it, there is no water chip inside, and Vault 12 is next. But where is this Vault 12? Well, in Bakersfield. How does one get to Bakersfield? There is no location with that name anywhere in the game. According to the disc, Vault 13 is located in an area northwest of Vault 12, so Bakersfield should be in the southeast. Later the player finds out that the city is now dead and is conveniently called Necropolis by travelers. But just that short piece of pre-war information is enough to guide the Vault Dweller if they know how to interpret it. In addition, Fallout can keep players on their toes whenever they do things that are socially repulsive, such as insulting or stealing. But that sense of morality is unrestrained. The Vault Dweller can do things that offend NPCs, deal with the consequences without breaking the game, and resume their task to find the chip. No strings attached. In fact, Tim Cain mentioned this in his GDC 2012 talk.
No strict morality like the Ultimate games had. We wanted the player to be good or evil, do anything he wanted, go anywhere he wanted, and be only really restricted by how skillful he was at playing a game.
The game can punish players if they get caught doing things like stealing or attacking civilians, since hostility is answered with hostility by virtually every armed NPC nearby. Urban areas are always spaces where there is a certain level of intimidation, and characters can turn hostile quickly, drawing in interested bystanders that will either help the dweller or try to kill them. Nothing less than murder will quench their bloodthirst. That's life in the wastes. The mechanics of hostility and morality in Fallout can be so unpredictable. The game tries to make the player see such a volatile world through the eyes of someone who used to live a simpler and more alienated life in an underground shelter. Someone who now has to make do with the knowledge that can be gathered from this brutish and nasty world. With that knowledge, the Vault Dweller must come to terms with the reality of their situation when returning to the Vault. It's a tough return, as bittersweet as an ending can be. If the player has not chosen to let the Master's army destroy Vault 13, which they can, and that liberty is one of the things that stand out in Fallout, they find a relieved but somewhat regretful overseer. Jackarin proceeds to tell the Dweller that the image of a savior who will only inspire other people in there to question their status quo and want to leave, to follow in their footsteps.
You saved us, but you'll kill us. I'm sorry. You're a hero, and you have to leave.
The savior can actually choose to leave with or without a little taste of revenge. The battered figure of an underdog walks back into the wasteland, perhaps reminding the player of those fitting words in the introductory song.
Maybe you'll think of me when you are all alone.
The ending of Fallout is a unique event. During development, everyone was working on the same thing most of the time.
On Fallout 1, it seemed like everybody was working on everything all the time. There was something
except for the end of the game.
Well, except for actually, okay, let me rephrase that. Up until a certain point, we thought everybody was working on all parts of the game, and then we discovered half of the game hadn't actually been written.
Yes.
Perhaps that lack of teamwork consistency is what made the ending turn out the way it did. Ambiguous, morally plural, unequivocally in need of a sequel that could reveal whatever happened to that improbable explorer. The impending demise of the Vault is a true apocalypse in Fallout. The inhabitants can't understand how it is to live outside, so they may as well assume that the dangers are as alarming as the war was to their ancestors. But the Vault Dweller must be able to overcome those fears. And it's interesting to see that some of the hardest challenges that they face can influence them to ignore the safety of their fellow dwellers and just let Vault 13 be invaded by the Master's army, which invalidates the image of the savior that the game develops in the beginning. And creating a hero, anti-hero, or a villain depends on the opportunities players are given to fill in that blank with any character they want to impersonate in such a ravaged, eerie, grim afterworld. Hi everyone, George here. I just wanted to thank you for watching this video. Fallout is such a special game for me, and I'm sure it is for lots of people out there too. So if you've enjoyed the video, you can hit the like button. If you didn't, there's the dislike button as well. Leave a comment if you want to talk about the things I discussed in the video. It's always great to have some feedback. Also, if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video comes up. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I see you next time.